Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivara Dari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivara Dari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivara Dari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Nandana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Nandana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Radha Madhava Shri Radhe. Jaya Jaya Radha Govinda Jaya Radha Govinda Jaya Radha Govinda Jaya Shri Radhe. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada. Jaya Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashatata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Tulasi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinda Ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the disassembled devotees also. Wherever they may be, all glories. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. If you know, you can chant along. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nasta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. And if you know the English, you can also recite the English. Before reciting the Srimad Bhāgavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhāgavatam, and by rendering the service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatayine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai. Welcome everybody to this morning's Srimad Bhāgavatam class. Today we're reading from Canto 3, chapter 28, verse 7 and 8. So I think it's already almost pulled up. And we'll read the Sanskrit, and then translation and the purport. I better flip to my page. Okay. Etar anyascha patibir. Etar anyascha patibir. Manadushtam asapatam. Manadushtam asapatam. Buddhyayunjita sanakar. Buddhyayunjita sanakar. Jita prano hyatanjita. Jita prano hyatanjita. Etaranyascha patibir. Manadushtam asapatam. Buddhyayunjita sanakar. Jita prano hyatanjita. Please chant. Etaranyascha patibir. Manadushtam asapatam. Buddhyayunjita sanakar. Jita prano hyatanjita. Etar anyascha patibir. Manadushtam asapatam. Jita sanakar. Jita prano hyatanjita. Vaishnavis. Etaranyascha patibir. Manadushtam asapatam. Buddhyayunjita sanakar. Sanakar. Taprano yatanjita. Okay. Let's go ahead and do text 8 quickly. We'll focus, I think, mainly on 7. So if you want to go to text 8, we'll read the Sanskrit. Then we'll come back and do word for word and translation stuff. Or actually, yeah, you can stay here. We'll read the translation, then we'll go to 8 before. So we can say it all together, the word for word translation. Sorry, being confusing. Etai, by these. Anyai, by other. Cha, and processes. Mana, the mind. Dushtam, contaminated. Asat patam, on the path of material enjoyment. Buddhya, by the intelligence. Yunjita, one must control. Sanakai, gradually. Jita prana, the life air of being fixed. He, indeed. Atanjita, alert. Translation, Srila Prabhupada. By these processes, or any other true process, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, we'll read the purport. Eter anyascha. The general yoga process entails observing the rules and regulations, practicing the different sitting postures, concentrating the mind on the vital circulation of the air, and then thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Vaikuntha pastimes. This is the general process of yoga. The same concentration can be achieved by other recommended processes, and therefore anyascha, other methods, also can be applied. The essential point is that the mind, which is contaminated by material attraction, has to be bridled and concentrated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It cannot be fixed on something void or impersonal. For this reason, so-called yoga practices of voidism and impersonalism are not recommended in any standard yoga shastra. The real yogi is the devotee, because his mind is always concentrated on the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is the topmost yoga system. Text 8, I'll just read it. Suchau deshe pratishtapya vijittasana asanam tasmin svasti samasina rijukaya samabhyasat. Translation. After controlling one's mind and sitting postures, one should spread a seat in a secluded and sanctified place. Sit there in an easy posture, keeping the body erect, and practice breath control. Everybody take a deep breath. Sitting in an easy posture is called svasti samishina. It is recommended in the yoga scripture that one should put the soles of the feet between the two thighs and ankles and sit straight. That posture will help one to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This very process is also recommended in Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter. It is further suggested that one sit in a secluded, sanctified spot. The seat should consist of deerskin and kusha grass topped with cotton. First, I want to express my gratitude. One, for being given the opportunity to speak Srimad Bhāgavatam. And my prayer is that somehow by sitting here and speaking, although I'm not qualified, that I can learn how to do the service and get better at doing the service so that I can serve Srila Prabhupada's mission and help spreading Krishna consciousness and giving it to others. So that's my desire and my prayer. I hope that I can speak something that is truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and according to Shastra, and somehow we can leave here inspired to remember Krishna through our day and his instructions. So I want to focus on the first text. We'll talk a little bit about both, but mainly the first text 7. It says, by these processes, or any other true process, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I also want to appreciate Matanga Prabhu's class yesterday. I was listening. We had the residents, you guys probably know, but we had the Be a Monk Challenge, which is a preaching program we put on over the weekend. And so it was very, very just Friday night all the way to Monday morning, Monday to lunch actually. We had 12 new people. Some have been practicing for a little bit, and then some of them were not even familiar with, like Bhagavad Gita or chanting any kind of japa or anything. So it was really quite exciting to have them come, and then waking up at 4:30 in the morning, going to Mongol Arti and hearing Srimad Bhāgavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and having all these different classes, and very much feeling like that enthusiasm, appreciating and glorifying the devotees of their own, accord, their own experiences. And so I was listening to Matanga Prabhu's class just last night because I was with the monks yesterday, and I was appreciating, especially he was speaking about the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj and how Dhruva Maharaj was practicing this yoga system, Ashtanga Yoga, and he did it so perfectly that he ended up getting to the perfection of life. He ended up seeing Krishna face to face and realizing that I want to perform devotional service. This is actually the jewel. And he also spoke a little bit about how bhakti is the elevator. This process, there's so many details. It's so complicated, and it's not a process that's made for this age even. Even if we wanted to sit and try to do Ashtanga Yoga, it's very, very difficult. And so according to this prescription, it would likely not be possible, at least for most of us. And so it led me to think of 2 points coming to how this Ashtanga Yoga is not the process for this age, but Bhakti Yoga can take us to the same position, the same goal that Ashtanga Yoga does very easily. And those 2 things was that one is the power of the heart is that we can go through this mechanical process, and it's good. Good things will happen. We'll get purified. We'll have some discipline. We'll have some strength. We'll have intelligence, study. All these things are necessary and important. But the power of the heart is that Krishna reciprocates. And so we can go on our own endeavor and try so much and put that out there. But when we offer something with love, or we put ourselves out there in this vulnerable position in love, hoping to receive love back, praying for it, and then Krishna shows up. Krishna shows up, and he shows up through the spiritual master. And so whenever we put our heart in it, and the important part is that we're connected to that parampara, we're connected to Krishna somehow, then even Srila Prabhupada, he came to the West where, everybody was all sorts of messed up and doing drugs, and, they may have been practicing yoga, hatha yoga or asana, trying to, but they have no knowledge of the true process. And therefore, did they get love of God? No. They may have got abs or a little bit of weight loss or some kind of stretching ability, something like that. But they didn't get something that was eternal, something that would last. And so, through bhakti, although we're still following a process, all of you guys are also following rules and regulations. You're all sitting there straight up. You're all breathing, I think, right? And so we have a process, we have regulations, we have a way that we do things, but because we're putting our heart into it, we're offering this love, and Krishna reciprocates, and we're empowered by Srila Prabhupada to make progress in this spiritual path. Even Krishna, he says, someone can offer me something very simple, a leaf, or a fruit, flower, leaf, or water, but does he actually accept those things? He accepts the love. When you offer it in devotion with love, then I will accept it. And so that was the first thing, was the power of the heart and how we receive empowerment through the spiritual master. And the second thing that I was thinking when it comes to Ashtanga Yoga, and thinking just about how difficult and complicated this process is that you have to know your strength, actually. If you, even just like, in the West, we're familiar with one type of yoga where you put your foot behind your head and like you breathe through one nose, stuff like that. If you can't do a handstand, and then you try, and the teacher says, go do a handstand, what's going to happen? You might jump, you might put your hands on the floor and think like, okay, this is what it looks like, this is what I'm going to try to do. But when you try to do it, you're going to fall over. You might hurt yourself, you might pull a muscle, you might fall over on the other person on the yoga mat and hurt them. There's so many things that can happen if we don't have like this true knowledge. But when we know our strength, we can understand like, okay, if I want to do a handstand, if that's the goal, then let me stretch the muscles that I need to do that handstand. And if I need arm strength, let me focus on making my arms strong so that I can do this handstand that I want to do. And so in the same way, with whatever spiritual practice we have, we can understand that there are certain steps that we need to take so that we can strengthen ourselves and strengthen our ability to get to that goal that we want. So in the same way, with bhakti, there are certain things. We have this love of God, pure love of God, Krishna prema that we want. That's the goal. And everybody here, this is what when we chant Hare Krishna, that's what we're praying for. And but there are some things that we can do to strengthen ourselves so that we can get to that goal more easily. And Hadai, he gave, at the Be a Monk program last night, he gave a really nice take-home class, and he was talking about the 5 different things, the main things that we can do. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about this. I don't actually want to focus on Ashtanga Yoga, even though that's how I started, but I want to focus more on Bhakti Yoga. And going back to the teachings of Kapila Dev, this is the process that he's given to Mother Devahuti. And so, actually, part of the gift that we were giving yesterday for the monk program was books. So we gave Teachings of Lord Kapila Dev, and we gave Srimad Bhāgavatam, and then we gave Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and also a Prabhupada nectar, depending on where they were and what they may have shown interest in. And so I want to read, going back, and also this helps me a little bit. Sometimes in Bhāgavatam class, when we're looking so much into the detail and one verse at a time, sometimes for me, it's always nourishing, it's always good. But sometimes I can lose focus of the big picture. What is the point of what we're talking about? So sometimes I can get sucked into like, oh wow, the universal form of Krishna is like, wow, that's amazing. But then I forget that it's not the point to be interested or to really like get absorbed into the philosophy, but to remind ourselves, this is why we want to love Krishna. This is Krishna's glory, this is Krishna's greatness, and it should fuel our devotional service. And so, yeah. So in chapter 9 of this canto, just a few back, it's called, the chapter is called Purifying the Mind for Self-Realization. And text 15, or text 16 actually, it says, when one is completely cleansed of the impurities of lust and greed produced from the false identification of the body as I and bodily possessions as mine, one's mind becomes purified. In that pure state, he transcends the stage of material happiness and distress. So we'll talk a little bit about what the verse is saying, about how the mind is contaminated, and we need to keep it bridled and controlled. Yeah, it says, the text that we read, 7, by these processes or any other true process, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this verse, it's saying that we have these impurities, these contaminations of lust and greed produced from our false ego. We think, I am this body, I am my desires, and this is mine, I can control, I can enjoy, and I can have things of this world, even though they're temporary. And but if we get purified, one's mind becomes purified of that, he can transcend the stage of material happiness and distress, right? And so we know that the function of the mind is to accept and reject. I like this, I don't like this. This causes me pleasure, this causes me pain. And so this is the trouble that our mind gives us, is that when it is so loud and it says, you're going to really like this, this is going to really be good, or you're going to be able to have and control and enjoy, and you can have it, you can do that. It's kind of tricky because it is not depending on intelligence. But when we're hearing and we're gathering this knowledge, then with intelligence, our intelligence can overpower it. And so in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes of this text, chapter 9, it's verse 54. He says, our mind is our friend and our mind is our enemy. If it is cleansed, it is a friend. If it is dirty, we contact material disease. If we keep ourselves clean, pure, we will not be contaminated. And according to Vedic civilization, one has to clean himself externally 3 times daily, once in the morning, again at noon, and again in the evening. And those who strictly follow the brahminical rules and regulations follow this process. Cleanliness is next to godliness. So conditional life means that the mind is covered with dirty things, and this is our disease. When we are in the lower modes of tamagun and rajagun, these dirty things are very prominent. One has to raise himself to the mode of sattva, or goodness, by the process of sankirtan and shravana. One has to hear Krishna Katha. Krishna is within everyone's heart. The individual soul is part and parcel of Krishna, and Krishna wants the individual soul to turn to him. Unfortunately, the conditioned soul is attached to material enjoyment, and this is the cause of the bondage to birth, death, old age, and disease. Thank you. So there's an emphasis here on hearing, Sankirtan and Shravana. And Sankirtan, it's interesting that it doesn't just say Kirtan, because the first 3 processes of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, it doesn't say Kirtanam, it says Sankirtan, Shravana Sankirtan. So how important is it to have the association of devotees, to be together, to be hearing Krishna Katha, hearing and chanting together, and also the verses that we read, the part of the prayers that we read before, or we chant before we read Srimad Bhāgavatam, Nasta prayeshu bhajreshu, Nasta prayesha bhajreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhāgavatam, we're hearing, that's how all the impurities, anything that's troublesome to the heart, it gets destroyed. And what is in place of what is destroyed? What's put there? Mm-hmm. And how is it? How is it planted? What is the description, the word? Irrevocably. Irrevocably established as a fact, something that it doesn't go away. It becomes realized. You realize that that loving service is the topmost that we can experience in this life. And so we must regularly hear Srimad Bhāgavatam, and that will destroy the unwanted things in the heart and help us control the mind. Also in this book I was reading later on, it talks about how there's a chapter in chapter 12, and it's about association with the Supreme Lord through hearing. The same idea of Shravanam, how important it is. In text 25 and 26, it says, "In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. Thus, consciously engaged in devotional service, in the association of devotees, a person gains distaste for sense gratification, both in this world and in the next, by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. This process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is able to control the mind." When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is actually able to control the mind. And so here again, we're hearing how we can purify our mind and get control, to put a bridle, to put a saddle on the mind, get on it, tell it where to go. We're going to go this way, mind, okay? And so, we hear so many things all day long, and especially for those of us who might not live inside of the temple, we especially hear so many things in advertisements. We get on the subway, there's things everywhere, and just like we were hearing when we were reading about the Virat Rupa of Vishnu, that this universal form, the definition of sound actually isn't just like, it doesn't just come through the ears, but it's a receiving of information. And so when we receive information, we're hearing Srimad Bhāgavatam, even if we're reading it with our eyes, or we're hearing it from Srimad Bhāgavatam class, or we're seeing Prabhupada and his behavior, we're seeing the person Bhagavat. This is all how we're hearing and absorbing the association of Krishna. And so in this text, it's quoted from Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Shanta Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. And it talks about, beautiful. It says that, do you know the translation for that? Exactly, yeah. So this is very good. We know the Sanskrit, we know the English. I knew you would know it, but it's very good. Sorry to put you on the spot. So it says, "I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shamasundar, Krishna himself for the inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts, with the eye of devotion, smeared with the ointment of love." And this is something happens the more that we hear, the more that we're absorbing this association, is that our vision starts to change. The way that we see the world changes, our desires change, and what we think the mind likes or dislikes also changes. Because just like what this verse is saying, in the association of pure devotees, having these discussions and talking about Krishna is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and to the heart. And so it's a very blissful process. It's very much enjoyable. And when our vision changes, our mind also will change. So the things that we think we like will start to change, and we'll start to realize that actually Krishna is the person that I like. Krishna is the thing, the object that I desire. And especially service. We want to give love and we want to receive love. And it also pacifies the mind. And it's how we can control. So I was reading that, and something that came to mind which I was a little bit hesitant to mention, but it kept coming up. Probably like 2 years ago, I went to a retreat in Washington, D.C., and my spiritual master was doing a retreat on Mana Shiksha, one text that was written by Raghunath Das Goswami. And even though this text is way above my pay grade, it is above my realization, it's very helpful. And I want to refer to it because it reminds me of my spiritual master and the service that I got to do for him and the instructions and classes that he gave. So I'm not going to speak like very heavily on it, but I do want to refer to it. And so, is anybody familiar with Mana Shiksha? Mana, maybe we can, the translation. Does anyone know what mana means? Mana? Mind. And Shiksha. So it's instructions to the mind from Raghunath Das Goswami, which was one of the 6 Goswamis. And so I'm not going to specifically refer to like the text, but actually Mother Urmila Prabhu, she has compiled this really nice book with different commentaries, has the text and the translations, and different commentaries from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and then also contemporary saints like Sachinanda Maharaj and Bhaktivigyan Maharaj and herself and different people. So this is like the little edition, but there's also a big edition that goes into detail with the commentaries. And so part of these instructions to the mind, there's 12 instructions, and verse 1 through 3, it kind of talks about the qualifications. How do you even start to think about how you're going to control the mind? And so verse 1, I will read verse 1 because I really appreciate it. It says, "O dear brother, O mind, having given up all pride, please develop unprecedented and excessive attachment to Sri Guru, to Sri Vrindavan, the abode of cows, to the devotee residents of Vrindavan, to all the devotees on this planet, to the confidential mantra given by Sri Guru, to the holy names of Sri Radha Krishna, and to the process of surrendering to the fresh youthful couple of Raj. Holding your feet, I beseech you with sweet words." So even in this attempt, maybe sometimes we've heard the quote from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that if your mind is a little bit crazy, then first is it the broom first or the shoe first? Does anybody remember? You beat it with a shoe, and then in the evening you beat it with a broom. Whichever one's closest in reach. You grab the shoe, you grab the broom. And that's one way. Sometimes we have to be a little bit strict with our mind, tough with our mind. But also sometimes we have to be very soft with our mind. And we have to convince our mind with pleasing words, sweet words. My dear brother, my dear mind, you're there. Please do what I say. Please do follow the desire that's actually in my heart. You might have so many desires, but be patient. Please wait. And let me fulfill my desire to serve Krishna. And so, and the last, please let me develop unprecedented attachment to the process of surrendering to this fresh youthful couple. It doesn't say, let me be attached to full surrender. The process of surrendering. And the process of surrendering isn't just, the process is not that your eyes are already smeared with ointment. The process is finding out what the ointment is, finding the doctor to prescribe the ointment, how do you apply the ointment, putting the ointment on. You might have to wait for the ointment to work a little bit. And so there's a whole process that might not be as fun and inspiring and beautiful. It might be difficult. But still, we should have attachment to this process because it is blissful and it gets us to the goal that we want. It helps us control our mind. So verse 1, it's starting the journey to Vrindavan by having affection for Krishna and all that is related to him. This is the first qualification, including non-sectarian appreciation of devotees. Verse 2 is our relationship with our spiritual masters. What to do, what not to do, and the place of Lord Chaitanya and our love for Krishna. So when we're thinking about how to control our mind, we can think, what does my spiritual master want? What does he desire and what pleases him? And seeing Lord Chaitanya's example, of course. Verse 3 is a little bit esoteric. It's talking about our spiritual identity. What is our relationship? Verse 4, 5, 6, and 7 are are very interesting because it actually talks about the obstacles to our mind. Why is our mind unbridled and going all over the place and contaminated? And so I really like what Mother Irmela has put, because she's given this Manashiksha at a glance that has a little summary, and it gives the problem that Raghunath Das Goswami introduces to us, and then it also gives the solution. And so it says that one problem is that we're absorbed in mundane topics, desires for liberation, and desires for the opulences of Narayan. So we can't stop talking about things that are material or not relevant to spiritual life. And we want to get free from our suffering. And then we're desiring to enjoy like Krishna enjoys, the opulences of the kingdom of God, you can say. What is the solution? To serve Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. So meditate. We have Radha Govinda here, and Srila Prabhupada has given us Krishna book and Srimad Bhāgavatam, where we can see how to serve Radha and Krishna. And through the spiritual master, through Harinam Sankirtan, serving the holy name. So verse 5 is wicked deeds fueled by lust, anger, greed, and so forth. And the solution is to cry for help from the devotees of Krishna, killer of baka, or deceit. And so for Srila Prabhupada, we can pray to Srila Prabhupada and take his instructions when we're reading, especially his books and his purports. This is how we can cry for help. And if we cry for help, that means that we have to actually take that help also. That we read and that we try to practically apply what instructions are there. Verse 6, the problem is deceit and pretense. And I wanted to refer to the text for this because it uses a little different wording. Actually I'm going to read this text. So this deceit and pretense, this verse, it says, "O ruffian mind, why do you burn yourself and me, the soul, by bathing in the trickling urine of the great donkey of full-blown hypocrisy and duplicity? Instead, you should always bathe in the ocean of love emanating from the lotus feet of Sri Sri Gandharvika Giridhari, thereby delighting yourself and me." And so this deceit and pretense, it's used as hypocrisy and duplicity. When we hear, do we apply it? Are we hypocritical sometimes? Maybe. And that's not to say that you hear it one time and then you better do it. You better be perfect. You better shape up. You better never, ever even think about doing something wrong again. But that hypocrisy, it's referring to our intention. Are we trying our best? Are we trying to remember the instructions of our spiritual masters? Are we trying to remember Bhagavad Gita and Krishna's instructions to Arjuna? Are we trying to apply that? Because that is when we will become simple and non-duplicitous, is when we're actively and intentionally trying to apply this. And then verse 7, the problem is desires for fame and honor. And it says the solution is service to a very exalted devotee of Krishna. So here, especially living in the temple, we have a very advantageous position where we have a lot of visiting exalted devotees. Just like Bhakti Prabhav Maharaj is here right now, Chandrasekhar Maharaj lives with us. We have such a unique opportunity. And even there's so many different teachers in our lives and devotees in our line that are within ISKCON, and that we can serve, that we can figure out how can I serve them to help propagate Srila Prabhupada's movement. And so, these are just some instructions, some things that we can do to help us kind of control the mind. And there's an emphasis on hearing, association, and chanting, Shravanam, Sankirtam, and getting that from the devotees who have it themselves, who can give it to us. So it's 8:46. Maybe we can open for discussions or comments, and or feedback, any kind of constructive criticism. Something that came up all throughout the weekend, especially for the Be a Monk program, is that this was like a big a big question was, how do we control the mind? And what about association? What is spiritual? What is not spiritual? And at one point we sat in here and we were talking about temple etiquette. It was around like 11:30 a.m. And we were talking about how do we make... Oh, maybe Param Brahma has a comment? We can give the mic to Param Brahma. Param Brahma.
Last time you mentioned about Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj using the brooms and shoes, beating up the mind, that many of our Acharya mentions that relates to beating means not actually physically picking up the shoes and stick, that means picking up our chanting beats. So that's how you beat them up. Otherwise people will thinking, how I'm gonna beat, because you beat your own physical body, but the mind itself is very subtle in nature, so you can't see and touch them. So beating means the way it drags you away from your constitutional position, straight away pick up. Because in that time when you pick up the beat, your mind says, don't pick it up, leave it there. And you don't want to chant. So when you beat with mind, with that chanting, that means you are beating it 100,000 times.
That's so wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and actually that makes a lot more sense. The mind is subtle and we're chanting. Because it's important to stay in the mode of goodness, and sometimes if we're harsh, then that's the mode of ignorance. So if we're beating our mind, if we're going in there and we're gonna take care of it, then maybe we gotta check our modes a little bit. So that's really, thank you for sharing that. Can you give him the mic?
Because when we are dealing with the mind, the chanting, it's called that mantra. Man means mind and tra means to deliver. So the mind is, trying to give you a trouble, so you have to give him deliver from this bad contamination of thinking that you are this body. So that is mantra. So that's why to control the mind, this mantra is given. Mantra.
Yes, also a very nice point. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Prema Mani.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your nice class. I was listening to Sabyasachi Prabhu's, he has a video on his YouTube with one devotee and a Muslim on the street. And it's like a Hare Krishna Muslim debate. And at the end, the Muslim man, he kept saying, well, yeah, so at the end of the day, how can we accept that there's only one way? And the Prabhu was saying, well, there's so many walks of life, and we're all allowed to be biased, and we're all allowed to worship God in our own practice according to our level of love, I guess. But this verse, the translation. Oh, turn it on. Can it go back up? Yeah.
Which verse is it? The Bhāgavatam verse?
Yeah. One more. This one. Can we go up? I just forgot. Okay. Okay, you can go back down. Sorry. Yeah, by these processes or any other true process, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind. And so I just wanted to ask if you could touch on how do we explain to people that because it says by these processes or any other true process, so it's not just okay, we're Hare Krishnas and we're the number one, but it's saying any other true process, which means that they're all what's the word, they're all bona fide.
Mm.
So maybe you could touch up on that, 'cause it just reminded me.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. And actually, I asked this exact question to one of my Shiksha gurus, and just last night, because the weekend was so crazy, and then I didn't get a lot of time to prepare. And so last night at like 10 p.m., she's in India, so it was good. But I called her and I was like, "Can you just expand on this and just help me understand?" And so, one, Prabhupada, he refers to it in the purport. He talks about how this something that is not a true process is this yoga that's associated with voidism and impersonalism. And actually, it's interesting, in the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev, it says that if we're doing devotional service and yoga and trying to unite with the Supreme, then how can we unite or unite with the impersonal? It's everywhere, it's everything. If we're very limited, there's no way that we can actually do that. So it's not a true process. And she said, the true processes are Ashtanga Yoga, Karma Yoga, or Varnashram Dharma, a process that we can follow that elevates us. There's sacrifice and austerity, renunciation, charity, Vedic study. And Kapila Dev, he specifically gives this process to Devahuti, this process of bhakti. And he describes Ashtanga Yoga. And then Narada, just like yesterday, he gave a certain process to Dhruva Maharaj. He gave the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And so these are all ways to control the mind and take it away from sense gratification, so one can come to fix the mind on Krishna. But even all of those processes, none of them are effective if you don't have bhakti. And there are many processes. That's why everyone needs a spiritual master. And actually, I'm so glad that you asked this question, because the point that everyone needs a spiritual master, we follow the specific process given by our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, which is different from other Acharyas. And for all true processes, the principle is the same and the goal is the same. But the specific details of the practice may vary according to time, place, and circumstance. And actually, during Matanga's class yesterday, one question came up, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Why do we chant that before Bhagavatam? What is that mantra? Where does it come from? And it's funny, when I asked my teacher, she referred to this text in Canto 4, Text 8, Chapter 54. And it says, I'll just read the English. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is the 12-syllable mantra for worshipping Lord Krishna. One should install the physical forms of the Lord, and with the chanting of the mantra, one should offer flowers and fruits and other varieties of foodstuffs, exactly according to the rules and regulations prescribed by authorities. But this should be done in consideration of place, time, and attendant conveniences and inconveniences. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya is known as the Dwada Ashakshara mantra. This mantra is chanted by Vaishnav devotees, and it begins with pranav, or omkar. There is an injunction that those who are not brahmanas cannot pronounce the pranav mantra, but Dhruva Maharaj was born a Kshatriya. And so the prescribed rules, as stated here by Narada Muni, are that one should accept the mantra through a bona fide spiritual master and hear the mantra in the right ear. And it talks a little bit about like Gayatri mantra and stuff. But the point is that we should be considerate of the time, place, and circumstances. And so this true process, like for example, Jesus Christ, he gave a true process of bhakti. And if we follow his examples and follow his teachings, then you will get the result of love of God. But yeah, and in the same way, Srila Prabhupada, if we hear his instructions and we follow in his footsteps, we'll get the same result. Even though in India, maybe this process of bhakti yoga might look different. You see that, it's mainly, you might be chanting 64 rounds every single day because that's the standard there. That's the instruction that's given. And Prabhupada came from the West. He said 16 rounds, no less, chant this. And it kind of goes back to one of my first thoughts that I had when I read this text is the power of the heart is that empowerment comes when we're sincerely desiring to do something and we approach the spiritual master in this mood that I want to serve, I want to surrender, then we receive empowerment. And so this true process are already given. All of them are there in the Vedic text, and we have to see, do these processes actually line up with scripture? or authoritative text. And also the spiritual master, the acharyas.
So, the Prabhu in the debate, he was saying that, it's about the destination. And so we may all choose a true process, but it's also about the destination. And you were just saying, you can either choose to follow Jesus Christ, or we're following Srila Prabhupada. And we understand that it's the highest destination. So I guess on our side, it is biased, and it is also, we also think that we're the highest. But how, or I don't know, I just think about these things. So when I talk about it like this, then it helps me to understand how to connect with people who are not devotees, but they're also spiritual beings. And
Yeah, and in Mana Shiksha, like the verse 1, it says that first we have to have affection for Krishna and everything that's related to him, including non-sectarian appreciation of devotees. Everybody is a devotee, and this is part of like that debate that we did, the Debunka Monk for the Sunday program, as we're talking about how Krishna in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, text 11, he says that everyone follows my path in all respects, and as they surrender, I reward them accordingly. So it's not really a question of where you're at right now doesn't mean like the process is, how will I say this? Specifically in this context, we were talking about Buddhism. And so asking what is the reward, what is the goal of that process? You might go through that, and it is a bona fide process. Even though you might not make it all the way, it might not be the highest, you might not make it to the perfection, but it is a process. It will elevate you. The same thing with Varnashram Dharma, is that you will get elevated and you might not, if you think that, okay, I'm a brahmachari now, and if I want to upgrade, like I have to make my way up that ladder, brahmachari straight to sannyasi or grihasta and vanaprastha and go through the whole thing, then still it's a process. So we can't think that once we get there, we're finished. But we have to know what the goal is and what we desire to go. What is the perfection? Yeah, maybe Brahma, do you want to say anything about that? Okay.
Vasudevaya. So that's how we start. That's one of the answer.
One of the reasons. Okay.
Yeah, because as you said that somebody asked yesterday, why do we chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya before starting the class? Before starting or writing the Bhagavatam, Vyasudeva wrote Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. If you just read it out, Canto 1, Chapter 1, verse number 1, which is Janmadya Yasyatha Anvayad Itaratas, the first line it says Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
That's interesting. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So it's 9:01. Maybe we'll stop here. Thank you so much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki.